So for those of you who know, I'm back home. I'm back home in my little room. Finished traveling now. I've just been praying, and I wanted to make this video because I just felt like felt like, oh, there it is again. I gotta make one. And I wanted to talk about why, even though I have the picture of Jesus Christ as my profile picture, I hate religion, and I try not to hate it because we shouldn't hate anything. But I want to go over some things that I really, really dislike about religion, and I believe Jesus Christ is not a big fan of. We have all had our experiences with religion. You know, we've all experienced the self-righteousness, the exclusion, the judgment. And all these things, they come down to one thing fundamentally. And that is, do you have the spirit, or do you have a mental ego mind conception of religion? So here's what I want to tell you. Let's say you have a person and he embarks on the journey towards God, and he works on being more righteous, right? He forsakes the women, he stops smoking cigarettes, or he quits a drug, and now he is more righteous. So he is better, he has increased, he's more righteous, he's closer to God. And then with that thinking, all these, this implies a lot of things. This now implies, number one, I'm closer to God, or I'm somehow better, or I'm favored in God's eyes, or all of these things. Which, what happens in the individual is that the mind or the ego takes what is of the spirit and applies it to itself. We see the same thing. Let's say you go to a church and you have a whole face full of tattoos and piercings, and you look evil, you look like, I don't know, it looks evil, right? And they're like, no, we're not gonna let you inside the church. Why is that? It's because the Bible told them to be more righteous. The Bible told them that God likes righteousness and that we should strive to be righteous. And so in their minds, they are more righteous now because they suffer, because they don't do what is of the flesh. And because they suffer, because they don't do what is of the flesh, because this causes suffering to a degree, they get, they have this certain bitterness, or this certain pain that they carry, which turns to anger, because it's like, how dare you not suffer the way I do, and then you think you deserve to come where I am in this church. And here's what happens. It's again the same thing, because what happens is, if you suffer to some degree for God, or what you think is God, you become, if you do not have the spirit to correct you, your mind will say, okay, I'm more now, I'm more righteous, I'm better, I'm favored by God. So that's where you get self-righteousness. You judge yourself by your righteousness. And this is why the Bible continuously reiterates that it is not by your righteousness that you're saved, but by the grace of God. Why? Because this is a very deep spiritual thing. If you are defined by your righteousness, all of a sudden you have a system of exaltation, you have a ladder, you have lesser and better people in the eyes of God. And this is not the case. It is not the case that your righteousness is something that you should attribute to yourself or your accomplishment, but you should be thankful for, because it is grace. See, here's another thing. If you lack wisdom and you're just self-denying for no reason, or you're not praying to see why you shouldn't do the things we want to do, if you don't pray to see the reasons, you're gonna get bitter, and you fail to understand that these things are better for you. It is better for you to not sexually indulge. It is better for you to not take drugs. But if you can't see that and understand that from within, this will produce a certain anger, a certain resentment, and a certain pain, and you will let that out on other people who are less righteous than you, because that's the standard of righteousness that you judge yourself and the world by. But now you've made a mistake. You have mentalized something spiritual. You've made a ladder of exaltation and of ranks, and this is the exact problem. And this is all fundamentally spiritually. It all comes down to what is within you, right? The ego mind, the spirit, and the body, the flesh. And what the devil does is he takes what is of the spirit and applies it to himself. So this is what happens in the individual. And then once you have, let's say mainstream level of religion, that the average Christian isn't really full of the Spirit. They're just religious, the same way the average guy from Islam is just religious. They just follow the religion, or they say they do, and they do some practices, but they don't really live for God. And this is why they don't really see or know how detrimental sexual indulgence is, or that for example, the things they're abstaining of them because it's better for them, not because the sky daddy says so. But because I'm gonna say it how it is, if they're quote unquote brainwashed by religion, they're just gonna deny themselves for no reason. They're not gonna pray for understanding or to see. They just do what they're being told, and then they get miserable because they get resentful. If you try to follow God and you get resentful, then it's because you lack wisdom, and you should pray about that. You should not become self-righteous and then use this as a means of cope to exalt yourself in another way, because maybe you fail in the realm of getting a lot of girls or making a lot of money, so you use this as a means of cope to feel better about yourself and then exclude other people. Because truly, if a guy comes and he's full with tattoos and piercings and everything, he just looks evil. He can have Satan tattooed on his forehead. You should welcome him like everybody else, because you should realize that if he wants to come to the church, this is who it is for. For people like him, for people like me, for people like you, for sinners, because we sin. This is something I really learned, and this is why this helps me make this video. I spent a long time alone in my room, isolated, quote unquote, practicing righteousness. And I went on long semen retention streaks, or celibacy for those of you who don't know. And I quit cigarettes, I quit the weed, and I felt a little bit of anger towards people who would not practice the righteousness to the degree that I do, and suffer to the degree that I do, but yet still claim Christ, or yet still wanna quote unquote pretend like they're spiritual. And I analyzed myself, and what I found out is that this anger, this resentment stemmed from fundamentally ego. But what it stemmed from was, number one, self-righteousness, identifying with what grace has given me, and number two, a lack of wisdom. Why would I resent someone for doing something that is damaging to them? I would only resent them if I didn't know it was damaging to them, because I don't know why it is damaging to me, because I'm blindly following, because I'm brainwashed. Now, obviously, there's a transitioning phase. Just because you don't 100% can explain everything doesn't mean you're by definition brainwashed. Because what you think, you think you are gonna understand the truth 100%? No. This is why faith starts where knowledge ends. This is also wisdom, to know that your knowledge can't know. Faith will take over when your knowledge ends, right? But this is where my resentment for these people came from. And then I went to Thailand, and all of a sudden I found myself surrounded by temptations. I could download Tinder and I have over 100 likes within a day, and I can have sex whenever I want to. Now, of course, I could go to a massage parlor. I was there for 4 months, and it costs like nothing in my currency to go there and get a blowjob or whatever. But I actually didn't do it once. I was there for 4 months. I did not pay for sex once. But that doesn't make me more righteous or anything, because I still sexually indulged. But what that showed me was that no. You are not more. You're not more righteous. You're nothing. You think you're this righteous guy. But put all these women around you in the perfect moment, you're gonna fall like everybody else, because you're a filthy sinner and you can't help it. That's what I realized about myself. And I realized that I'll never do it. I'll never be the righteous example that I want to be to people, because I'm not supposed to be the example. Jesus Christ is the example. And we all fall short of the example, and we all need grace. And this is why once you become more spiritual, this hatred or resentment that the religious person carries, it gets turned into compassion and love. Because when you start to understand how the things are self-destructive, you no longer resent them for doing it, but you have compassion because they can't see. in the flesh, the things that are pleasureful, they seem to be exalted. They seem to be more good, or more as something better, something higher. But when you see, you know, oh no, this is damaging to you. So naturally the conclusion is, oh, no resentment or hate towards you, but compassion and empathy. Because you're killing yourself and you don't see it. It's no longer, oh, you get to do all these pleasures that I don't get to do because God says, fuck you. No, now we see, right? And this is the issue with the average religious person, and this is the issue with religion in general, because this is how people represent Christ. And then other people, and again, this is their own fault, but I'm just saying what happened to me. Other people, they see this religion, they see this way that this religion is being carried out. And then that brings them away from Christ, which is very sad. Because they will use scriptures. They will use a lot of scriptures, you know, and they will say, this is a sin, you will go to hell, so we shouldn't be around like these sinners, this is bad, you're bad. You need to be one of God's people, you need to belong to Israel, you need to be good, you need to be righteous, and if you're not, like, go away. It becomes this club of self-righteousness, exclusion, and hatred and resentment. And this is fundamentally what happens when the ego takes over and claims what is of the Spirit. For those of you on semen retention, you know this too well. If you start to identify with your powers, you're going to lose them. You're going to stop being righteous once you think you're righteous. Because that is an unrighteous thing to do. It is exaltation. The Bible says you must decrease so I can increase. And this is my problem with religion. I don't have a problem with religion. I have a problem with people. And if I have a problem with people, I have a problem with myself, with the flesh within me that also wants to be self-righteous, that also wants to think I'm somehow in some shape or way favored by God because I make these videos and I help people get to God. But this is all a lie. This is all a lie. These are all lies. So I don't really hate religion. I hate the flesh, because we do not war against people or institutions or religion, but against spirits, against princes of darkness. The flesh, you know, good versus evil. That's what it's about. You can have good in a church, you can have evil in a church. You can have good outside the church, and you can have evil outside the church. The essential thing, the essential difference between a true follower of Christ and a religious person is the Spirit of God. That's what differentiates between the two. Because we're all partly good and partly bad, religious or not religious, following Jesus or not following Jesus. So what the religious person will do, he will stick to mantras. He will be carnal minded. He will say these words and you are saved. And the spiritual person is going to be like, well, if you say these words, that doesn't mean anything. Anybody can say these words. How you think because you said these words now you're saved? This is like, it's carnal. Even the Bible says it. They think they will be hurt for their meaningless babbling. And it's talking exactly about religious hypocrites who love to say the words and do the things and pray openly and be looked at as the religious people, but inwardly they're very, very self-righteous. They have this underlying tone of, oh, I'm better than you and I'm favored by God. And this is what brings people away from religion and God. And I don't think this is by accident. I think if a society falls and the mainstream level of religion is within such a society, it is only a natural result that the religion will become corrupted of the devil or the mind or the ego. And you have a bunch of self-righteous and weak people. This is why I also don't like to be called a Christian, because all of a sudden you're putting me in this category with all these Christians who I don't like the self-righteous part within them. You know, I try to love everybody because I have the bad things within me too, and it doesn't really matter if you're Christian or whatever, but I guess this is people's own fault if they just, you know, put me away as a Christian and judge me as that, judge me as what has already been revealed to them through the modern society about the Bible. It's like, it's always the same. You talk about Christ, you talk about Jesus, people already have their opinions, but they've never read a page. They already know, oh, but it goes against evolution, how dinosaurs are real. You know, God says all these weird things, and God made everything. Why would you say it's bad? Or like, you know, they already have their ideas about the Bible, and they might even say, you know, if Jesus came, he would actually judge you because, you know, Jesus said this, but they've never read the Bible. But yet everybody has an opinion on the Bible, you know. So that's why It's a bit painful for me when I'm immediately just put into this box of naive, brainwashed religious person, because that's not really what I am. I see the beauty and the truth in Christ, and the fact that his ways are so true, and they work, and they are beautiful. But at the same time, I can look at religion and be like, what a mess, what a mess, because we are a mess, right? But yeah, this is my issue with religion. This is my issue, and it all comes down to the same thing. It's all within the individual. You can, if you know yourself, you can look outside and you can see why everything is the way it is, because you yourself are corrupt. If you weren't corrupt, the world wouldn't be corrupt. The world is corrupt. Why? Because we are corrupt, and none of us is going to be better or more favored or more righteous or anything. You might practice more righteousness, you might suffer for more righteousness, but you're a sinner. If you're a small sinner, if you're a big sinner, you need grace. And this is also, again, why the Bible is so deep, because the Bible clearly tells you that. Yes, faith without works is dead. If you believe, you will follow and you will suffer for it, but you will fall. So don't you ever for a second think you're anything better than anybody else, because that's going to feed the wrong side in you. That's going to feed your flesh. And what does the embodiment of perfection do? He becomes a servant. So when the guy with the tattoos and the piercing comes to the church, it's not, oh, you need to dress appropriately. You can't be dressed like this in a church because, oh, we are holy. No, no. This is exaltation. God doesn't exalt himself. He humbles himself. And through the humbling, you become exalted. So it's not, oh, this is some holy place. You can't wear this, or you need to, straighten up, like stay up straight. And this is dogmatic. You see, this is flesh. This, again, just repeat mantras, just say the right thing. This is fleshly if you lack the spirit. Because if you have the spirit and a person like that comes, it's like, come inside. This is for you. Hello. Let's learn about Christ, Let's see what he says. And this is, I think, what all of us must work on, especially those of you who suffer a lot for righteousness' sake, those of you who really try and deny yourselves, because I know that is hard, and it's even more hard if you're surrounded by people or society that doesn't even want to praise you for it, or doesn't even give you any admiration for it. You're just stupid in their eyes. Why would you forego the pleasures? You're just stupid. You don't even get, because deep down, I think a lot of us, we kind of long for this, hey, good job, man. Wow, that's impressive. You actually want to stop fucking around. That's so high, so spiritual. Wow, that's really impressive, because it is. But people don't see it that way. And we shouldn't do it for their approval, or, for the approval of man, or to be seen, or whatever. We should do these things in secret, of course, but it makes it harder to be righteous in a place, in a society like this. I think most of you know what I'm talking about when I say these things. That's why it's important. We who really suffer a lot for righteousness, and who deny ourselves, of course we get the fruits, and if we have wisdom, we see that, ultimately we suffer less because we take the right path. But we still suffer a lot, that we do not fall into self-righteousness. And this is why my trip to Thailand really opened my eyes. Because I had a little bit of self-righteousness, and I started to become quote-unquote religious, and I needed to shed that immediately, because I was so okay, no, you are just as filthy, you are just as disgusting. Don't you think you're anything else but a dirty sinner who is in need of Christ? And yeah, it comes down to humility, and the Spirit of God, which can transform a person from being religious to truly being spiritual, to not be so fixated on the words that come out of the person's mouth, but fixate on the goodness within them, and try to feed that and awaken that, right? The spirit. Because that's why the exclusion comes, the isolation. People look at things carnally. They say, oh, you said the wrong words, or you believe in the wrong thing. Now you are wrong. Because they themselves, what they do is they associate, or they attach themselves mentally to what they deem to be the truth. So I am in truth and you are not in truth, so you are wrong. And if you're wrong and not in truth, not only are you wrong, you are bad and I am good. No, this is wrong. You're wrong about that. Not because I'm right, but because we're all wrong. That's the thing. That's why it's so deep, because that prevents you from exaltation. If you truly want to follow Christ, the higher you want to go, the more power you want, the more you have to humble yourself and not want the power and not care about being higher. Isn't that so beautiful? Like how the God himself, if he came, he would be a servant. He wouldn't be the guy on the throne as we humans do it. He would be the servant, suffering for everybody else. And there's a very deep spiritual lesson in there, or something that just touches the individual's heart when one realizes this. Like, yeah, that's what it's about, to be serving people, to serve the sinner who comes to your church covered in tattoos and false beliefs and everything, and to receive him and to feed the goodness within him, not exclude him because he's bad. You're bad. The fact that you're excluding him because he's bad is a testimony to the fact that you're bad yourself. So come down from your high horse. Be humble. He who humbles himself will be exalted, and he who exalts himself will be humbled. What did Jesus do? He humbled himself. But we don't want to humble ourselves to be exalted. This is where the Nietzschean perspective comes in, that the religious person, or the person who follows God, he just wants another way to power. And his way to power is by following God, but deep down he's motivated by power. But the problem is that to the degree you are motivated by power, and that's why you humble yourself, you're not humbling yourself, you see. Humbling yourself, truly humbling yourself, is letting go. It's just letting go. I don't know how else to put it. Okay, I'm nothing. I'm just me. I do mistakes. I do wrong. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know. You got it. I'm nothing. I'll just try to show love and uplift others and be a servant. That's what we're called to be, right? And religion fails in that aspect greatly, and it removes people from Christ and his true message. And that's why I sometimes struggle with hating religion, feeling negative towards it. But ultimately, the Bible says it best. Seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. For years I talked about the Bible as if I've ever read a page, because I was confronted or around religious people and religion in general, and I had like religious class in school and everything. But looking back, I mean, even how these churches look, go Google a modern church, how it looks. It's literally just white walls. It's like modern architecture, just boring, nothing there anymore. No, it's just like a classroom. This is not what Christ wanted. And the reason we're learning this is not because our leaders want to bring Christ towards us, but because they want to make us think we already know Christ. We already know the Bible. We already know these stupid religious people. So that we think that's what Christ is. That's the biggest fallacy people make. They think people are the representation of Christ. That's like, you could not make a bigger mistake than that. But that's their own fault. Again, if you live in ignorance and you do not truly seek, you will never get beyond that point to where you realize, okay, maybe that's not quite the same thing. And yeah, this is intentional. Like, we know this is intentional. We know they don't teach us about Christ because they want to help us. They want to imprint a carnal view of what Christ is and what religion is, so that we never dare to look at it again and go as far away from it as we possibly can. Rightfully so, because it's full of hypocrisy and deception and hatred and self-righteousness and all of these things.